The chamber was massive. Commander Daniel Price stood in the center of a room that could fit 1,000 people, but only held about 200. The walls were made of a metal that did not exist on Earth. The ceiling rose so high that light seemed to hang in darkness. This was the Galactic Council, and Earth was about to hear its judgment. Price wore the dress uniform of the United Nations Space Force. His uniform was dark blue with silver insignia. Other humans sat behind him. President Foster was there. General Aaron Hudson was there. Dr. Moore, Earth's chief scientist, was there. They all sat in silence, waiting. The alien delegates surrounded them in a large circle. They were tall and thin, with 4 arms and eyes that looked like they could see through walls. They were shorter, with thick bodies covered in scales that changed colors when they moved. They were bird-like, with feathers that rippled when they spoke. There were 14 different species in the chamber. None of them looked human. A delegate stood up. Its name was difficult to pronounce in human language, so Price just thought of it as Prime. The creature did not use a mouth to speak. Instead, its body vibrated, and a translation device converted the vibrations into English words. "Humanity must be isolated," Prime said. The words came through speakers in flat, mechanical sounds. "You are too violent, you are too unpredictable, you are too much of a danger to the galactic community." Price felt anger rise in his chest, but he did not move. He had been trained for this moment. He had known this was coming. A delegate, colored bright purple, made a hissing sound. The translation device converted it to words. "The humans have killed millions of their own kind. They have waged wars across their planet for thousands of years. How can we trust such a species with access to the wider galaxy?" President Foster stood up. Her gray hair was pulled back tightly. Her face showed no fear, but Price could see her hands shake slightly. "We have changed," Foster said. "The wars you speak of are in our past. Earth has been at peace for 70 years. We have learned, we have grown." "You have learned nothing," said a delegate. This one had blue feathers. "You still build weapons, your governments still argue with each other, your people still hurt one another. You are not ready." Price watched as they spoke. He knew the words would come next. He had waited for them his entire military career. Prime vibrated again. "The Galactic Council has voted. The decision is final. Earth will be quarantined. All human ships outside of your solar system will be decommissioned and destroyed. Any human found beyond the boundary will be executed. You have 20 years to prepare. After that, your planet will be sealed off from the rest of the galaxy. You will not have contact with any other species. You will not travel beyond your own system. You will be alone." The words hit like a physical blow. President Foster sat down slowly. General Hudson stood up as if he would argue, but Foster put a hand on his arm. The general sat back down. Price felt cold inside. The isolation would destroy human progress. It would trap Earth's people on a single world. It would force humanity back into the past. But worse, it said something about what the galaxy thought of humans. It said that humans were not worthy. Humans were dangerous. Humans did not belong among the stars. The delegates turned away. The others followed. The delegate with blue feathers paused and looked at Price for a moment. There was something in the alien's eyes, pity perhaps, or recognition of shared pain. Then they turned and left. The human delegation stood in silence. President Foster gathered her documents. General Hudson looked like he wanted to break something. Dr. Moore stared at her hands as if they no longer belonged to her. Price did not move. He stood in the center of that massive chamber, in the middle of the galaxy that no longer wanted humanity, and he made a decision. 20 years, that was what they had been given. 20 years to either accept the exile or find another way. Price knew what he was going to do. The flight back to Earth took 3 days. The human ship was small and old compared to the alien vessels Price had seen at the Council. During those 3 days, Price barely slept. He spent his time thinking about what was possible. What was possible if someone had the courage to try it? What was possible if someone had the vision to believe in human potential when the entire galaxy had rejected it? When the ship reached Earth, Price did not go home to his family. Instead, he went directly to the Pentagon. He requested a private meeting with President Foster. 2 hours later, he sat across from her in a secure room. The walls were thick enough to block any spy equipment. The door was guarded. "I have a plan," Price said. He did not waste time with pleasantries. "A plan that will take 20 years, a plan that will require absolute secrecy, a plan that will either save humanity or destroy us completely." Foster looked at him. She was tired. Her face showed the weight of being the president of a species that had just been cast out of galactic society. But her eyes were still sharp. She was still a fighter. "Tell me," she said. Price leaned forward. "We will tell them that we accept the isolation. We will appear to comply. Our ships will be decommissioned. Our space program will seem to shut down. But we will build something they cannot see. We will build in the places they cannot reach. We will use Earth's resources and human ingenuity to create a fleet. A military fleet. Not large enough to match the Galactic Council, but advanced enough to make them think twice about attacking us. Advanced enough to give us a choice." Foster did not speak for a long time. She looked out the window at the Earth below. Billions of humans lived on this world. Billions of humans who knew nothing of what had just happened. Billions of humans whose future Price was proposing to change. "If we do this and they discover us," Foster said, "they will destroy us. They will not give us a trial. They will not negotiate. They will simply eliminate the threat." "I know," Price said. "And if we succeed, if we build this fleet and they do not discover us, what then?" "Then," Price said, "humanity will finally have a choice. They will have to treat us as equals because we will have the power to demand it. Not as supplicants, not as a conquered people, as equals." Foster turned to look at him directly. "You understand that this will require deception on a scale human civilization has never attempted. We would have to hide this from almost everyone. We would have to hide it from our own people." "I know," Price said. "Thousands of people would have to know the secret. Maybe tens of thousands. Someone would talk. Someone would sell the information to someone would betray us." "Probably," Price admitted. "And you still want to try." Price thought about the moment when they had declared humanity unfit for the galaxy. He thought about what it meant for the human species. He thought about the billions of people on Earth who had been told they were not worthy. He thought about what those people deserved. "I do," he said. "We are not what they say we are. We deserve the chance to prove it. And if we fail, at least we will have tried. At least we will have chosen our own path instead of accepting their judgment." Foster was silent for another moment. Then she stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at Earth, at the planet that had given birth to the human species, at the world that would soon become a prison or a fortress, depending on whether they succeeded. "Build your fleet," she said. "But understand, Daniel, if this fails, you will have doomed us all." Price nodded. "I understand." 20 years had passed. Commander Lisa stood in a tunnel deep beneath the Nevada desert. The tunnel was 5 miles underground. Above her were thousands of tons of rock and dirt. The walls were reinforced with steel and concrete. Lights hung from the ceiling, casting long shadows across the metal floor. In front of was the Magellan. It was the largest warship humanity had ever built. It was 2 kilometers long. Its hull was made of a special alloy that combined human technology with material harvested from alien ships that had crashed on Earth in earlier decades. The warship looked nothing like human ships. It looked like something that belonged in space, something that could fight and survive and win. Was 65 years old. Her hair was mostly white, but her back was still straight. She had devoted the last 20 years of her life to this single purpose: to build a fleet that would give humanity a voice in the galaxy, to create the means for Earth to stand against those who had judged and rejected them. "How long?" she asked. Her voice was direct. She had learned long ago not to waste time with pleasantries when lives and the future of humanity hung in the balance. Captain Henry Martinez stood beside her. He was younger than only 45, but he had the bearing of a military officer who had spent decades preparing for war. His dark hair was cut short. His uniform was gray, the color of the secret fleet. His uniform would never be seen in public. It would never fly over any city on Earth. The entire Artemis project had to remain invisible. 2 months, Martinez said. "The final systems are being installed now. The reactor is stable. The weapons are ready. The crew quarters are complete. We can have the Magellan ready for launch within 60 days. Nodded. She had heard these estimates before. She knew they were accurate. The people working in the hidden bases beneath Earth were not like normal military personnel. They understood that the work they did had to be perfect. There was no room for mistakes. One failure, one leak of information, and the entire project would be discovered. The Galactic Council would destroy everything. Earth would be erased from the galaxy. She walked around the massive ship. Her footsteps echoed in the tunnel. The ship's hull was smooth and dark. There were weapons ports along its length, each one capable of firing energy beams that could destroy other ships. There were sensor arrays that could detect vessels light years away. There were shields powered by a reactor that used a process no human scientist had fully understood when they started. They had learned by trial and error, by reverse engineering parts of the alien technology, by sheer human determination. "What about Sergeant Cooper and the assault teams?" asked. "They are ready," Martinez replied. "We have trained them in zero-gravity combat, ship-to-ship boarding operations, and orbital assault tactics. They are the best soldiers Earth has ever produced. Some of them have lived in the training facilities for 5 years without leaving. They have forgotten what Earth looks like." Understood that this was the price. For 20 years, thousands of humans had given up normal lives. They had worked in hidden bases. They had trained in secret. They had maintained a cover story for their absence from the regular world. Some had told their families they were research scientists. Some had claimed government positions. Some had simply disappeared from their old lives entirely. But there had been failures too, people who had cracked under the pressure, people who had tried to escape and reveal the secret, people who had simply broken down from the strain of keeping such a massive lie. The Artemis Project had security procedures to deal with those who threatened to expose it. Those procedures were not pleasant. Tried not to think about them too often. "Show me the communications center," said. They walked deeper into the facility. The tunnel connected to a larger cavern. Inside the cavern were multiple control stations. Banks of computers covered the walls. Screens displayed information about each of the 12 warships under construction. The Magellan was the first to be completed, but the others were not far behind. The He would be ready in 3 months, the in 4, and so on until all 12 were complete. Rachel Mitchell worked at one of the stations. She was young, only 32, but she was the best communications specialist the Artemis Project had found. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with precision. She was encrypting transmissions between the hidden bases. The encryption was so complex that the Galactic Council's intelligence agencies would never be able to break it. "Status?" asked. "The final launch window is being prepared," Mitchell said. "The ships will exit Earth orbit at calculated intervals. If our intelligence is correct, the Galactic Council's monitoring systems have a blind spot in the Neptune region of the solar system. We can use it to our advantage. All 12 ships should be in position beyond Pluto within 90 days of the first launch." Nodded. She had gone over the math 1,000 times. She had worried about it 1,000 more, but the plan was solid. It was based on observations that human scientists had made of the Council's patrol patterns. The Council did not believe humans were capable of building advanced ships, so they were not searching for human ships. They were looking for human communications, for attempts to leave the solar system, for signs of rebellion. But they were not looking for advanced military vessels, because they did not believe such vessels were possible. That blindness, believed, was the key to success. She spent the rest of the day reviewing status reports. Every warship was ahead of schedule. The weapon systems were being tested and proved effective. The crew training was rigorous and successful. Even the political situation seemed stable. President Foster had implemented policies that appeared to comply with the Council's isolation order. Visible human space programs had been shut down. The public had been told that humanity would focus on internal development. Life on Earth had seemed to accept the exile and move forward. But beneath the surface, the Artemis Project had grown into a massive underground industry. Entire cities had been built in caverns. Manufacturing facilities had been constructed in the deepest part of the ocean floor. Satellite facilities had been hidden on the moon and on asteroids. Tens of thousands of humans knew the secret, and not one of them had revealed it. That night sat in her personal quarters. It was a small room carved from stone, deep beneath the desert. She had a bed, a desk, a computer terminal. She had not seen her family in 20 years. She had told them she worked for a deep space research facility. She had told them she could not visit. She had told them she could not call. They thought she was a brilliant scientist contributing to humanity's future. In a way, they were right. She pulled out an old photograph from a drawer. It showed her standing with her husband and 2 children. The photo was 30 years old. She was younger then. Her children had grown up without her. They had families now that had never met, lives that had continued while she worked in darkness. She had made a choice. She had chosen humanity's future over her own family's present. That choice had cost her dearly. But when the Artemis fleet was revealed to the galaxy, when humanity stood up and claimed its place among the stars, that sacrifice would mean something. Or so she hoped. 2 months later, the Magellan was launched. It rose from the Nevada facility silently, using gravitational manipulation technology that left no signature the Council could detect. As it climbed towards space, stood in the command center and watched the screens. The ship rose higher and higher until it broke through Earth's atmosphere. Then it powered up its advanced engines and raced toward the gap in the Council's surveillance network. The ship arrived in its designated position beyond Pluto. Then, standing alone in space, it activated its cloaking systems. It disappeared from visual detection. It became invisible to the Council's sensors. The HFY launched 2 weeks later. Then the Hudson. One by one, the warships of the Artemis fleet left Earth's hidden facilities and positioned themselves beyond the solar system's edge. Each launch was terrifying. Each one risked discovery. Each one could have been the moment when the Galactic Council realized what humanity was doing and sent its forces to destroy the project. But none of them were discovered. The ships reached their positions. They cloaked themselves. They became like ghosts, invisible to the galaxy that had judged humanity and found them wanting. By the end of the 20th year, all 12 warships were in position. The Artemis fleet was ready. Humanity had built its secret armada in darkness. Now it was time to step into the light. In the command center, made the decision. She looked at Martinez and Mitchell and all the others who had devoted their lives to this moment. "It is time," she said. "Broadcast the message. Tell the Galactic Council that humanity has arrived." The message went out across the galaxy. It was simple and direct. It said only one thing: "We are here. We have chosen our own path. We demand recognition as equals in the galactic community. The age of humanity's exile is over. The age of humanity's emergence has begun." The Galactic Council chamber exploded into chaos the moment the human message was received. Delegates from 14 different species stood up all at once, screaming and vibrating and making sounds that their translation devices could barely convert into words. Admiral Cross watched from the observation deck. He was a calm man, but even he felt the weight of what was happening. The entire galactic civilization was reacting to what humanity had done. Everything depended on the next few minutes. "They deceived us," Prime vibrated in rage. The creature's body turned dark with anger. "They were ordered to comply. They were told to accept isolation. Instead, they built weapons, warships. They have violated the Council's authority." The delegate, still colored purple, hissed loudly. "This is proof that humans cannot be trusted. They are exactly as dangerous as we said they were. They should be destroyed immediately. If we allow them to exist, they will become a threat to the entire galactic community." But not all the delegates agreed. A delegate with blue feathers stood up. Her name was difficult to translate, but in human language she could be called Speaker 9. "We should wait," Speaker 9 said. Her voice was reasonable and calm. "The humans have not attacked us. They have only revealed that they have the capability to do so. We should assess what we are facing before making a decision that could harm us all." "You are a fool," they said. "We know what we are facing. We are facing a species that cannot be controlled. That is all we need to know." Admiral Cross left the observation deck. He moved through the corridors of the Council station toward the main communications array. The station was built in space, orbiting a neutral planet. Representatives from every species in the galaxy met here to discuss matters of shared interest. But at this moment, the station felt like a war room instead of a place of peace. Cross reached the communications center. He had made arrangements weeks ago, anticipating this moment. The Artemis fleet had known that the message would bring this reaction. The Council would be divided. Some would want war, others would want negotiation. Cross's job was to force the galaxy to choose the path of reason. "Send the signal to the fleet," he ordered. "All 12 warships are to move into visible positions. I want every species in this galaxy to know that humanity is here." The technician at the communications station hesitated. "Sir, if we do that, the Council will respond with military force. The end will launch an immediate attack." "I know," Cross said, "but they will also know that they are not facing a small group of ships they can easily crush. They will know that humanity has created something advanced, something unexpected. That knowledge will make them hesitate, and in that hesitation we will have our opportunity." The signal was sent. Across the galaxy, hidden warships powered up their cloaking systems and revealed themselves. The Magellan appeared. The HFY appeared. The Hudson, the Cook, the Hillary, and the... 12 massive vessels positioned strategically throughout human-occupied space and key routes of the galaxy. The detection systems throughout the galactic community lit up. Thousands of worlds suddenly showed the presence of new military vessels. The revelation was shocking to every species that saw it. Back at the Council station, Prime felt the impact of the revelation like a physical blow. 12 ships, advanced technology, positioned to control key trade routes and strategic locations. The humans had done the impossible. They had built a fleet that could not be ignored. "They are declaring war," they said. "Look at their positions. They are threatening our supply lines. They are threatening our worlds." Cross accessed the Council's communication network. He had authority to broadcast a message to all assembled delegates. He did so now. "I am Admiral Cross of the human Artemis fleet," he said. His voice was steady and calm. "Humanity has built what you see before you, not to conquer, not to threaten, but to claim our right to exist as equals in this galaxy. For 20 years you isolated us. You told us we were not worthy. You told us we were too violent and unpredictable. But we have survived. We have created something remarkable. And now we are asking the Council to recognize what we have always known. Humanity deserves the same voice in this galaxy as any other species." The message was broadcast to every world. Billions of beings across the galaxy heard the humans speak. Some were afraid. Some were impressed. Some understood immediately that the galaxy was about to change. "This is a declaration of war," Prime said, but the creature hesitated. There were military strategists. They understood what 12 advanced warships meant. The humans had positioned their vessels in locations that made a first strike devastating to the Council's forces. It would not be a quick victory. It would be a long, painful war. "We should respond," the delegate said, but there was doubt in the translation of its hiss. Cross made his next move. He knew the Council would be divided. He knew that younger species, those that had also chafed under the Council's control, would be thinking about the implications of humanity's rebellion. He made sure his next message reached not just the Council, but every inhabited world in the galaxy. "The Council has held power through force and control," Cross said in the broadcast. "They have decided which species are worthy and which are not. They have restricted which worlds can develop weapons. They have determined which species can expand and which must remain where they are. Humanity challenges this system. We do not accept judgment from those who see themselves as superior. We demand the right to choose our own path. And we ask every species that has ever been restricted by the Council to think about what this moment means. It means that change is possible. It means that the days of the Council's absolute power may be coming to an end." The broadcast was inflammatory. It was exactly what Commander Price had hoped would happen. The younger species began to stir. They started to openly question the Council's authority. The Wren, a species of water-dwelling beings, announced that they were reconsidering their compliance with Council regulations. But the An were not interested in political discussion. They were interested in eliminating the threat. Within hours, they launched a military strike against a human outpost in the outer regions of known space. 2 ships and 50 soldiers attacked a small human research facility. Captain Henry Martinez commanded the defensive response. He had been expecting this attack. His ships had been positioned to respond. When the strike force entered the system, they were not alone. 3 human warships were waiting. The battle lasted 17 minutes. It was brief and devastating. The ships were older and slower than the human vessels. The human weapon systems were more advanced. The human tactics were unpredictable and effective. By the end of the battle, both ships were destroyed. They lost 500 soldiers and 70% of their combat capability in the region. The loss shocked the Council. Prime itself appeared before the assembled delegates with wounds visible on its body. For the first time, the creature showed something that might have been fear. "They are more advanced than we believed," it said. "An immediate response might result in our own destruction." They demanded a full-scale military operation, but support from other species was not forthcoming. They had seen the humans defend themselves without attempting to invade or take territory. They had seen humans choose restraint even when they had the tactical advantage. Speaker 9 voiced what many were thinking. "The humans have proven that they can defend themselves," Speaker 9 said, "but they have not proven that they are the threat we were told they are. They sent a military force against human territory. The humans destroyed that force. They did not use that victory to launch a counterattack. They did not use it to threaten the Council worlds. That is not the behavior of a species bent on conquest. That is the behavior of a species defending its right to exist. The debate that followed lasted 3 days. The council was splitting apart. On one side were the Ant demanding war. On the other side were younger species and those tired of council control, wondering if humanity's emergence might signal the beginning of a new order. In the midst of this chaos, Admiral Cross made a bold proposal. He requested a direct meeting with the council delegates aboard the Magellan. He invited them to tour the flagship. He invited them to see humanity not as a distant threat, but as a living, breathing civilization. It was incredibly risky. The delegates could be assassinated. They could be held hostage. The council could use their absence as an excuse to launch a full military attack. But Cross understood that sometimes the only way to change minds was to bring people face to face with what they feared. The delegates arrived. 20 representatives from different species boarded the Magellan. They were escorted through the ship by Captain Martinez and his officers. What they saw surprised them. They saw discipline and organization. They saw humans working together with precision and purpose. They saw a military force that was capable and professional, not savage and brutal as they had been told. More importantly, they saw humans treat them with respect. There were no insults, no threats, no demonstrations of superior force. Instead, there was courtesy. There was genuine interest in understanding their concerns. There was an offer of peace if the terms were fair. When the delegates returned to the council station, many of them had changed their minds about humanity. They spoke to their colleagues about what they had witnessed. They described the discipline of human soldiers. They described the cleanliness and order of the human ship. They described Admiral Cross, who had been calm and reasonable and genuinely interested in finding a path forward that did not lead to galactic war. The Ant were isolated. They wanted war, but they could not force it, not without the support of the other species. And other species had begun to see that humanity might be the catalyst for the change they had been waiting for. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Would there be war? Would there be peace? Or would humanity's emergence force the entire galactic civilization to reconsider how it was organized and who had the right to decide what was best for all species? The negotiation table was small and circular. Admiral Cross sat on one side. Across from him sat representatives of the Galactic Council. There were 8 of them. They had refused to come, believing that any conversation with humanity was beneath them. They had also declined, sending a message that said they would abide by whatever the council decided, but would not legitimize the human presence by meeting directly. The other species had sent their best diplomats. Speaker 9 of them was there. An ambassador named Shen had come, representing the faction of his species that believed negotiation was possible. The Wren sent a water-breathing representative named, who communicated through a sophisticated translation system that converted sound waves into human language. Representatives from and they also sat at the table. It was a moment of tremendous risk. If the Council's military forces attacked the meeting, every diplomat here would be killed. The human delegation would be destroyed. It would be a declaration of total war. Cross had positioned the Magellan's weapons systems to defend against such an attack, but he knew that defense would be impossible if the entire Council fleet was committed to assault. But Cross had made a calculation. He believed that the Council would not attack, not because they were peaceful, but because they were calculating. The Ant wanted war, but they did not want it alone. They wanted the support of the other species, and to get that support they would have to allow negotiations. They would have to show that they had given peace a chance. If they attacked now, they would appear to be the aggressors. They would unite the younger species against them instead of against humanity. So the negotiations had begun. Humanity demands recognition as equals within the galactic community, Cross said. He was speaking calmly, but with absolute clarity. We demand the right to expand our territory. We demand the right to develop weapons for our own defense. We demand representation on the Council itself. These are not excessive demands. These are basic rights that every other species in this galaxy possesses. You demand much, said the Wren representative. The creature's body rippled in the water tank where it sat. The Council has spent 10,000 years establishing order. That order depends on hierarchy, on structure, on species knowing their place. And your place, Cross said, is to serve the interests of the older species. That is the hierarchy. That is the structure. Humanity rejects it. Speaker 9 of the leaned forward. The human is not wrong. I have lived under Council control for 300 years. We have been told we are not ready for independence. We have been told we are not capable of self-governance. but I see a human species that has built advanced weapons in 20 years while being watched and restricted. I see a species that has demonstrated remarkable ingenuity and courage. Why should they accept council control? Because the order of the galaxy depends on it, said one of the other delegates. This was a species that had been established in the galaxy for 8,000 years. If every young species rebels, if every species demands total autonomy, the galaxy will collapse into chaos. Chaos? Cross asked. Or is it freedom that you fear? Is it the possibility that younger species might organize themselves without waiting for permission from those who claim to be superior? The negotiation continued for hours. Back and forth, the arguments were made. But slowly, a framework began to emerge. The Council would offer humanity membership with conditions. Humanity would accept limitations on weapons development. In exchange, the Council would guarantee human representation in Council decisions. But it was not enough for Cross. He understood that limited membership was another form of control. He understood that weapons restrictions meant that younger species like humanity would always be dependent on the older powers. He had not built the Artemis fleet to accept a limited role in the galaxy. I have a counteroffer, Cross said. He had been waiting for the right moment. Now he made it. The Council will be reformed, he said. The old system of hierarchy will be ended. All species will have equal representation. The older species will be honored for their experience and wisdom, but they will not control the decisions made by the Council. Every species will have one voice. Every vote will count equally. Any species will have the right to develop weapons, to expand their territory, and to determine their own future without Council approval. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the Wren representative stopped moving in its water tank. You are asking us to give up power, Shen said quietly. The ambassador was not angry. He was stating a fact. I am asking you to give up control in exchange for something better, Cross replied. I am asking you to build a galaxy where power comes from cooperation and consent instead of from force and restriction. I am asking you to create something that has never existed before in galactic history. Actual equality. The older species will never agree to this, the delegate said. They will declare war before they accept such an arrangement. Perhaps, Cross said. But ask yourselves this, would the other younger species stand with would the fight to preserve the system that has held them in bondage? Would the Wren, the fight to keep themselves in a subordinate position? Or would they stand with humanity and create something new? Speaker 9 stood up. All eyes turned to the delegate. Humanity has offered us freedom, Speaker 9 said. Actual freedom, not the limited autonomy the Council has occasionally granted to favored species. I will take this offer to my people. I believe they will stand with humanity. And the Wren, said the water-breathing representative, will also consider this offer seriously. We have been patient for 300 years. Perhaps it is time for change. The other younger species representatives began to speak. One by one, they indicated that they would consider Cross's proposal. The N were more hesitant, but even they did not outright refuse. The negotiations ended. Cross stood and looked at the assembled delegates. Take the proposal to your people, he said. Take it to your worlds, let them decide, but understand this, humanity will not return to isolation. We will not accept subordinate status. If the Council chooses to wage war against us, we will fight. And I believe that many of you will fight beside us because we are fighting for freedom. We are fighting for the future your children deserve. As the delegates left the Magellan, Speaker 9 paused. She approached Cross directly. You understand that they may attack anyway, she said. They may decide that losing their power is worse than facing war. I know, Cross replied. That is why I need you to prepare your people. That is why I need the younger species to be ready to stand against the old powers, not out of hatred, but out of commitment to the idea that every species deserves equality. Speaker 9's feathers rippled in a pattern that might have been respect. The humans are unusual. You have shown us strength, but you have not used that strength to dominate. That is rare. That is valuable. My people will stand with you. The delegate left. Cross watched her go, knowing that the most dangerous part of his plan was about to begin. The response came within hours. They announced a military mobilization. 500 warships were being moved toward the outer reaches of known space, the regions where human settlements had been established. It was a show of force designed to intimidate. It was also a threat of imminent war. But they did not attack immediately. They were waiting to see how the other species would respond. They were hoping that the fear of a massive military force would be enough to force the Council back into the old system. They were wrong. Speaker 9 announced that they would position their own warships to defend human space. The Wren made the same announcement. Other younger species followed. Within days, a coalition had formed. Not every species joined, but enough had that the military balance had shifted. The end could no longer dominate through force of numbers alone. The galaxy stood on the brink of war, but it was a different kind of war than anyone had anticipated. It was not humanity against the Council. It was young species against old species. It was the future against the past. It was freedom against control. In the center of this gathering storm, Admiral Cross worked with leaders from a dozen species to create a new vision for galactic civilization. They drafted proposals. They negotiated agreements. They planned for the possibility that they would choose violence over compromise. And they waited. Days passed, then weeks. The military forces remained in position, but no one fired a shot. The matriarch, the supreme leader of the species, was making a decision that would shape the galaxy's future. Finally, a message was transmitted across known space. It said would accept the new council structure. Moving to align themselves with the new reality, announced the same. The old order was ending. A new age of galactic cooperation was beginning. But the message also contained a warning. The UN had accepted the change, but they had not forgotten. They would watch humanity carefully. They would ensure that the human species did not become the new oppressors, replacing the old hierarchy with a new one based on human dominance. Cross received the message in the Magellan's command center. Around him stood officers from a dozen species. Humans, Wren, and they were standing together, looking at screens that showed the military forces withdrawing from their attack positions. War had been avoided. Peace had been established. But it was a fragile peace, built on the understanding that if any one species tried to dominate again, the others would stand against them. It was not a perfect solution, but it was better than the old system. It was better than the hierarchy and control that had defined galactic civilization for 10,000 years. And it had been achieved not through the Artemis fleet's weapons, but through the willingness of a single human officer to believe that there was a path forward that did not lead to destruction. It had been achieved through the courage to offer genuine equality, even when doing so meant giving up power. As the military forces and the galaxy began to breathe again, Captain Henry Martinez approached Admiral Cross. "We did it," Martinez said. "We changed the galaxy without firing a shot." "We changed the first moment," Cross replied. "Now comes the hard part, actually making the system work. 3 years had passed since the new council structure was established. The change in galactic civilization had been profound. Species that had been restricted for centuries were now free to develop their own capabilities. Younger worlds that had been autonomy were now masters of their own destiny. The old hierarchy was crumbling, replaced slowly by a system based on genuine cooperation. Commander Lisa stood in the new council chamber on Harmony Station. The name had been changed from the original designation. It was no longer a place where the old species imposed rules on the young ones. It was a place where all species met as equals. Was 78 years old now. She had stepped down from direct command of the Artemis fleet, though she still held authority over it. Her role had changed. She was now Earth's representative to the reformed council, and she had become something unexpected, a symbol of human restraint and wisdom. "The proposal from the Wren is solid," said. She was speaking to a committee that included delegates from 7 different species. "They wish to establish new settlements in the sector. Historically, that sector was controlled by and restricted to their expansion. With the new laws, the Wren have every right to develop there." "We have no objection," said the representative. It was not Shen anymore. The ambassador had returned to his world, and a new representative had taken his place. This one was named. "In fact, we would welcome Wren partnership in the sector. We believe our species can work together beneficially." This was how things worked now. Negotiation, cooperation, mutual benefit instead of domination. It was not perfect. There were still disagreements. There were still species that chafed under any rule at all, but the system was holding. The violence had ended. The fear was fading. Recalled her early years in the Artemis project. She had spent 20 years in darkness, building a fleet in secret, believing that eventually it would be needed for war. Instead, it had been used to force peace. The weapons of the Artemis fleet had fired only once, when defending against the attack. Since then, they had served as a deterrent, a symbol that humanity was willing to fight if necessary, but preferred negotiation. Admiral Cross had changed roles as well. He had stepped down from direct military command and now served as Earth's chief diplomat. His reputation as the officer who had chosen negotiation over conquest had made him one of the most respected figures in the galaxy. Young species looked at him as a model of what strength could be when it was coupled with restraint. "I have an announcement," said to the committee. "Earth has approved the development of 5 new colony worlds. These will be established not as human territory but as multicultural communities. We will be inviting citizens from allied species to help establish and govern them. We believe that mixed communities are the future of the galaxy. If we are to truly be equals, we must learn to live together." The announcement was welcomed. The younger species understood the symbolism. Humanity was not trying to expand human territory. Humanity was trying to create a shared future where different species worked together. After the committee meeting ended, walked through the corridors of Harmony Station. The station itself had changed. Where once there had been sections designated for specific species, now all areas were open to everyone. Humans walked beside. Wren in their water suits traveled through pressurized corridors alongside. The station reflected what the galaxy was becoming: diverse, interconnected, learning to live together. She encountered Captain Henry Martinez in one of the station's observation areas. Martinez was now Admiral Martinez, commanding the 4 remaining active warships of the Artemis fleet. The other 8 ships had been placed in long-term storage, but they remained ready if needed. "They are testing us again," Martinez said without preamble. The 2 of them had worked together long enough to speak in shorthand. Ware asked. "The passage. They have moved a small force into disputed space. Not an aggressive move, but a show of force." Nodded. They had not forgotten their loss of power. They did not have the military strength to challenge the new order openly, but they tested it constantly, looking for weaknesses, looking for opportunities to reassert dominance. "How did they respond?" asked. Speaker 9 moved a defensive force into position. It was all very professional, no weapons fired. Both sides are just standing and watching each other. But it is clear, they cannot move without the younger species responding. This was the balance that had been established. The older species could no longer dominate, but neither could the younger species move without the older ones being aware. It was a system of mutual restraint and mutual defense. It was not perfect, but it was working. "Good," said. "That is exactly how it should be." Martinez paused, then asked a question that had probably been on his mind for years. "Do you regret it? Do you regret the 20 years in darkness? Do you regret giving up your family for this?" Looked out at the stars visible through the observation window. She thought about her children whom she had barely known. She thought about her whom she had never met. She thought about the cost she had paid. "I regret the cost," she said finally. "I regret what I missed, but I do not regret the choice. We gave humanity a future. We gave the galaxy a chance to be something better than it was. If I had to do it again, I would make the same choice." 3 days later, Dr. Sarah Morgan made an announcement that changed the galaxy once more. She was a young human scientist, only 35 years old, but her work had been groundbreaking. She had discovered a way to achieve instantaneous communication across any distance using quantum entanglement principles that the older species had theorized but never perfected. The discovery was revolutionary. It meant that the galaxy could be truly unified in communication. Fleets could coordinate instantly. Negotiations could happen in real time across vast distances. Messages that used to take weeks to travel could be transmitted in microseconds. And Sarah Morgan did something that surprised everyone. She gave the technology away. She shared the designs with every species in the galactic community. She refused any compensation beyond basic funding for her research. "Why?" asked a journalist during the announcement ceremony. "You could have made Earth incredibly wealthy by keeping this technology exclusive." "Because the galaxy does not need more wealthy species or poor species," Morgan replied. "The galaxy needs unity. It needs the ability for all of us to talk to each other without delay. If I keep this technology for Earth, I am building walls. If I share it, I am building bridges. I choose to build bridges." The journalist's translator converted her words into every language spoken in the galactic community. The broadcast was shown on billions of worlds. For the first time, the entire galaxy saw humanity not as a species seeking advantage, but as a species seeking to contribute to the common good. That speech changed how the galaxy viewed humanity. Where once the older species had seen humans as a threat to be controlled, they now saw humans as a partner worthy of trust. Where young species had seen humans as potential new oppressors, they now saw humans as genuine equals committed to building something better. Watch the announcement from her office on Harmony Station. When it was over, she received a message from Admiral Cross. It was brief. A single line, "We did it. We actually changed the galaxy." She sent back her own message. "We changed the moment. Now we have to change the system." Months passed, then years. The new galactic civilization began to mature. Species that had been restricted for centuries were now developing new technologies. Young worlds that had been autonomy were now becoming centers of research and innovation. The removal of the artificial restrictions that the old council had imposed unleashed creative potential across the galaxy. 5 years after the new council was established, decided to retire. She had given enough of her life to the Artemis Project and to galactic politics. She was 83 years old. She deserved rest. Before she stepped down, she organized a reunion. She gathered together the architects of the secret project. Commander Daniel Price, now elderly and frail, attended. He had been the first to imagine that humanity could claim its own destiny. President Foster came as well. General Aaron Hudson, Dr. Moore, and many others who had worked in the hidden bases and laboratories, building ships and weapons in darkness, never knowing if their work would succeed. The reunion took place on Earth, in a new memorial complex built to honor the Artemis Project. The building displayed the history of the secret work. It showed the tunnels where engineers had labored. It displayed photographs of the warships being built. It told the story of how humanity had seized control of its own future. But the core message of the memorial was different from what many had expected. It was not a celebration of military power. It was a celebration of human choice. The inscription at the entrance read, "Here we built the means to defend ourselves, but we chose instead to use that means to build peace." This memorial honors those who understood that true strength lies not in domination, but in the wisdom to choose cooperation when we finally had the power to choose conquest. Price, Foster, Hudson, and stood together in the center of the memorial, looking at the displays. "We did something impossible," Price said. His voice was weak, but his words were clear. "We built a project that involved tens of thousands of people, and it remained secret for 20 years. We maintained hope when hope seemed foolish, and we were right to do it. We were right." "You were right," Foster corrected gently. "This was always your vision, Daniel. We just helped you make it real." "No," Price said. "This was humanity's vision. We all wanted the same thing. We all wanted our species to have a choice. We all wanted to prove that we were worthy of standing among the stars, and we did prove it, not by winning a war, by refusing to wage one when we had the power to." That night sat alone in her hotel room overlooking Earth's nighttime landscape. Billions of humans lived on this world now. The population had grown substantially since the isolation was lifted. Humans were traveling to other worlds. Humans were building partnerships with alien species. The age of loneliness had ended. She pulled out the old photograph again. The one of her with her husband and children, taken 30 years ago. She looked at their faces. She had given up so much to be part of the Artemis Project. But looking at the world below, knowing that humanity had transformed its destiny, she believed that sacrifice had meant something. Her terminal chimed. A message was arriving. It was from her daughter. It said, "Hello, Mother. I know you are retiring soon. My children want to meet you. We would like to visit you on Earth. Would you be willing to spend some time with your family?" Felt tears on her cheeks. She typed a response, "Yes, I would like that very much." 2 weeks later, stood at an arrival terminal. She had not seen her children in person in more than 40 years. A woman in her 50s approached her. It was her daughter. Behind her were 3 of them. People who had grown up without knowing their grandmother but who now wanted to know her. Walked forward and embraced her daughter. Held her without anger or resentment. She held her the way a child holds a parent she had feared was lost forever. "I am sorry," said. "I am so sorry I was not there." "I know," replied. "And I understand now. I read the history. I read about what you did. You gave humanity a future. You gave us all a future. That is something to be proud of." The family walked together through the terminal toward the waiting vehicle that would take them to home. As they walked, asked her questions about the Artemis fleet, about building warships in secret, about meeting alien species, about the moment when humanity finally revealed itself to the galaxy. Answered their questions patiently. She told them about the courage it took to believe in something when everyone around you was afraid. She told them about the value of sacrifice. She told them about the power of choosing peace when you finally had the strength to wage war. That night, sitting with her family, watching the stars through a window overlooking Earth's landscape, understood why she had made the choices she had. It was not for glory. It was not for recognition. It was so that moments like this could exist, so that humanity could have a future where families could stay together, so that humans could look up at the stars and know that they belonged there. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it, and in doing so, humanity had changed itself. The species that had once been judged as too violent and unpredictable had proven that it was capable of something more. It was capable of restraint. It was capable of wisdom. It was capable of using power not to dominate others, but to elevate all beings. The age of humanity's exile was over. The age of humanity's emergence had just begun. And the best part of that emergence was not the military power or the advanced technology. It was the understanding that humanity's greatest strength had always been its capacity to choose a better way, even when a worse way was available. Proving that equality is not just an ideal, but something real that species can build together. Martinez nodded. He understood what cross meant. The real work was just beginning. But looking out at the stars, knowing that humanity had finally claimed its place among them, knowing that the age of exile was truly over, Martinez believed that humans could do it. Humanity always had found ways to succeed when it truly mattered. And this time, success meant not victory over others, but partnership with them. That was something entirely new. In the council chamber, delegates continued to argue, but the fundamental question had changed. It was no longer whether humanity should be allowed to exist. It was whether the system that had cast humanity out should be allowed to continue. The galaxy would never be the same. That night, Commander Daniel Price began the most ambitious project humanity had ever attempted. He did not know it then, but the work of one man's belief would change the destiny of the entire human species. 20 years of secrets, 20 years of hidden work, 20 years of hope hidden in darkness, waiting for the moment when the truth would finally be revealed.